That was the text that ruined my Tuesday morning. I was stirring instant oatmeal at 7:14 a.m., getting ready for another shift at the IT help desk, when my phone pinged with a notification from my bank. 4,296.45 pending charge, St. Anthony Medical Center. At first, I thought it was fraud, a glitch, a system error. But when I called the hospital to verify, they calmly confirmed it. My father had been rushed to the ER 3 nights ago after collapsing in the garage. Chest pain, possible minor cardiac episode, stable now, discharged. Insurance only covered half. And guess what? The remaining balance had been billed to me, under my name, my address, my contact info. I hadn't spoken to my parents since last Thursday. No call, no text, no mention of a health crisis, just a bill, waiting in my inbox like a thank you card from hell. I sat on the couch for 10 full minutes, bowl of oatmeal turning to cement in my hand. The kind of silence where your brain tries to catch up to your reality, but everything feels like static. Then out of reflex or spite or both, when I opened Instagram, there he was. My brother Aiden, smiling, shirt half unbuttoned, standing next to 2 models and holding a bottle of champagne the price of my rent. Captioned, "Sky above, hustle within. Rooftop vibes, Tucker Founder's life." The location tag, the Monarch Lounge, NYC. He looked like he belonged there. Young tech entrepreneur, the face of ambition, the golden boy, the king. And me? I was just the clerk footing the kingdom's bill. Growing up, Aiden was the visionary, the brilliant, unconventional thinker. The one teacher said had great potential if he just applied himself. Meanwhile, I was the one who actually applied myself. Got the grades, got the job, paid the bills, but in our family, effort never outshone charm. When Aiden dropped out of college to build something big in New York, our parents called it bold. They praised his entrepreneurial spirit over dinner, while I silently budgeted how much I could afford to Venmo them that month. Rent had gone up in Austin. My car needed new brakes. But Mom had texted me, "If you can cover the electricity again this month, I'll be so grateful. Aiden's working so hard, and we don't want to stress him while he's building." So I covered it, like I always did, like I had since I was 23. Now, at 29, I was the emergency fund, the backup plan, the line of credit they never had to apply for. They called me reliable, strong, a blessing. They never asked me if I felt blessed. I stared at Aiden's post again. I knew the view behind him, $500 a night suites, rooftop with a private bar, champagne sabering service. His startup wasn't profitable, but he always seemed to live like a Forbes article. I glanced back at my laptop, still open to the hospital invoice. Pay now or schedule payment? No message from my parents. No heads up. No apology. Just an assumption that I would pay. Like always. Aiden got praise and platform shoes. I got bills and no vacation days left. That's when something shifted. Not anger, not quite. Just this cold, sharp clarity. They were never going to stop asking, because I never stopped saying yes. I closed the laptop without paying. Not yet, not this time, because maybe, for the first time, I wanted to know what happened if I didn't. And just maybe, they needed to know too. I didn't pay the hospital bill. Not that day, not the next. I left it sitting there like a test balloon to see if anyone would notice. No one did. No frantic call from Mom. No passive-aggressive text from Dad. No mention from Aiden, obviously. Just radio silence. It was almost worse than yelling. By Friday, the invoice was still unpaid, and my inbox was full of sales reminders and tech support tickets. I went to work like nothing had happened, answered calls from frustrated users who couldn't remember their passwords, fixed printers over Zoom, and walked home past people laughing at patio bars, holding hands, living lives untouched by other people's emergencies. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just hollow. I kept going back to the words my mom once said to me when I was 16, after I won a regional essay competition and didn't tell anyone because it didn't feel like a big deal. She'd found the award certificate in my backpack and held it like it was made of gold. "You're our pride, Nora. You always were." It wasn't just praise. It was assignment. That sentence became the script I lived by. Pride. The steady one. The fixer. The daughter who didn't cry when Grandma died, who held her little brother's hand during thunderstorms, who made dinner when Mom had migraines and reminded Dad to take his cholesterol meds. No one told me to do it. I just did. And they thanked me, with smiles and nods and the occasional, "You're such a blessing to this family." I mistook that for love. I grew up thinking that being helpful was the same as being valued. When I got my job in Austin, an entry-level tech support role with decent benefits, I didn't even hesitate to start sending money home. At first it was just small things. Groceries, utility bills, replacing a broken dishwasher. Then it was rent when Dad was laid off for a few months, then medical co-pays, then just until Aiden's app takes off. The thing is, I could afford it. Sort of. I wasn't rich by any means, but I lived small. Studio apartment, public transportation, no kids, no pets, no shopping sprees. I told myself it was temporary, that it was a privilege to help. And for a while, it was. Until I realized it was also a trap. Because the more I gave, the more they expected. The more I sacrificed, the more they leaned in. Not with gratitude, but with assumption. It wasn't thank you, it was can you just... I once tried to pull back. Not stop completely, just pause. I told Mom I needed to save up for dental work I'd been putting off. Her voice went tight over the phone. "Oh, I guess we'll just figure it out somehow." No anger, just guilt. Just that familiar weight dropping into my stomach. I sent the money anyway. And postponed the dentist. Again. That pattern repeated so many times it stopped feeling like a choice. It was a reflex, like breathing through pain. Sometimes I wondered if Aiden ever felt that pressure. If he ever stayed up wondering how to juggle family and finances and the deep, gnawing fear of letting people down. But then I'd see his stories. Another rooftop, another launch party, another caption like, "We out here making waves." And I knew the answer. He didn't carry the same script. He wasn't the responsible one. He was the dreamer, the risk-taker, the prince. And I? I was the infrastructure. The plumbing beneath the palace. The electricity that kept the lights on, quiet, hidden, necessary. No one celebrates the pipes until they burst. On Sunday, I bought myself a coffee and sat in a corner booth at a cafe near my apartment. I opened a spreadsheet and for the first time ever, tracked every dollar I'd sent home in the last 5 years. Every utility, every rent payment, every just this once. The total made my stomach lurch. $31,824.17. More than I had in savings. More than I'd ever spent on myself in that time. I stared at the number for so long I didn't notice my coffee had gone cold. That night, Mom called. Her voice was cheerful, like nothing was wrong. She told me about a neighbor's baby shower, asked if I'd watched the latest season of a show we used to love, said she missed hearing my voice more. And then casually at the end, "By the way, the gas bill came in high this month. If you could take care of it, that'd really help us out." I didn't answer right away. She waited. I could hear the pause stretch between us like a rubber band pulled too tight. "I'll check my budget," I said finally. It was the first time I'd ever said that. Not sure, not of course, not I've got it. Just maybe. A hesitation. It felt electric. My brother's LinkedIn bio reads, "Tech visionary and AI innovator. Founder at Mint Edge. Forbes Under 30 nominee. Unofficial." I stared at it for a full minute one night, trying to remember the last time I'd actually heard him mention work. Not just the grind or the hustle or the vague phrases he tossed around at Thanksgiving, but real work. Actual business, product, revenue, growth. Words that meant something. Aiden dropped out of New York University 3 years ago. He said he couldn't waste time in classrooms when his ideas were ready for the real world. Our parents clapped for him, called him bold, trailblazing, a CEO in the making. That weekend, Mom baked a cake that said, "To big things," in red icing. I was 26 at the time, knee-deep in overtime and budgeting apps. But Aiden? He moved into a sleek shared workspace in Manhattan, ordered business cards, and gave a TEDx talk about redefining digital value through intuitive AI. He never explained what that meant. The startup was called Mint Edge. Supposedly, it was a platform that combined behavioral finance and AI to help people manage spending habits in real time. I Googled it once. The website had a slick landing page, some glowing testimonials, and a coming soon badge under the features tab. That badge never changed. Still, our parents bragged about it every chance they got. "Aiden's doing something revolutionary," they would say. "He's got meetings with investors." One of his demos went viral. A podcast interviewed him last month. They never mentioned the credit cards I paid down for them, or the fact that I once covered their rent so Aiden could fly to a pitch conference in LA, and I never pushed back, because if I asked too many questions, it felt like betrayal, like I was the one lacking faith. Aiden was the future. I was just the person making sure the present didn't collapse. I accepted that dynamic the same way I accepted long lines at the DMV or high rent in Austin. I didn't like it, but I didn't think I could change it until I met Jenna. She was a project manager at my company. Sharp, dry sense of humor, had a knack for spotting BS a mile away. We became friends over lunch breaks and shared eye rolls during budget meetings. One afternoon, she mentioned her boyfriend was working in fintech. I joked, "Oh yeah? My brother's supposedly in that space, too. Artificial intelligence for financial habits. Mint Edge. Ever heard of it?" She paused. Mint Edge? Wait, that rings a bell. For a second, I thought she was impressed. But then she frowned. Didn't they quietly shut down last year? There was some sketchy talk in my network. I think they pulled their app from beta and ghosted their angel investors. I blinked. No, it's still active, I said, defensive without meaning to. I mean, his LinkedIn's full of updates. Yeah, she said slowly, but that doesn't mean it's real. I went home and searched again. Deeper this time. Domain registry, expired, demo site, redirected to a thank you for your interest splash page. The business address on Google Maps. Now a yoga studio. No press coverage in the past year. No updates on the product. Not even a tweet. My stomach dropped. I texted my mom that night. Casual. Light. Hey, haven't heard much about Mint Edge lately. How's Aiden doing with it? Her reply came hours later. Oh, he's still working on it. These things take time. You know how startups are. I knew she was lying. Worse, I knew she knew I knew, and she still chose to lie. That was the moment it all crystallized. It wasn't just that Aiden's startup had failed. It was that they'd all conspired to keep it from me, because they knew what that failure meant. If his dream was dead, the family's golden narrative cracked, and they couldn't let that happen, not when they'd bet everything on him. So instead, they doubled down, pretended it was still alive, fed me the illusion, kept asking for help, kept sending bills, kept saying, "He's almost there," as if I was just the investor who didn't need updates. I sat on my floor, surrounded by bills and half-read books and a fridge buzzing too loud, and realized something brutal. They weren't proud of me. They were dependent on me. Aiden got to chase a fantasy. I was paying for it in a real time. And suddenly that felt a lot less like loyalty and a lot more like fraud. It started with a coffee shop. I was trying to buy a latte on the way to work. Same place I always went, the same drink I always ordered, when my card got declined. Not once, twice. The barista gave me that half-polite, half-pitying smile and said, "Want to try another?" I did. My backup card went through. Barely. But the moment I walked out, the unease kicked in. I wasn't a big spender. My budget was tight but predictable. No recent shopping sprees. No late payments. So I checked my credit report, and that's when I saw it. A credit card opened 2 years ago under my name. I had no memory of it. The balance? Nearly $6,000. Mostly cash advances, monthly minimums barely being met, and, worse, late payments. The account was hurting my score more than anything it ever had. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I felt hot and cold at the same time. I called the bank thinking there had to be a mistake. Fraud. Identity theft. Something explainable. But after a 20-minute hold and a string of security questions, the representative calmly said, "Ma'am, the account was verified with your driver's license and social security number." I froze. There was only one other person who had access to that level of detail. My mother. I went numb. It didn't make sense. My mom wasn't malicious. She didn't lie, at least not before this year. But she also never asked, never told me about this card, never mentioned a single payment, never even hinted in the debt. I texted her right away. "Mom, did you open a credit card in my name?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing for 10 minutes. Finally, she replied, "Nora, I meant to tell you. We needed to help Aiden when things were tight, and we didn't want to burden you more. And it was just for a short time, I swear." I stared at her words like they were written in another language. Not to burden me more. As if putting debt in my name without asking wasn't a burden. As if sabotaging my credit score wasn't something that could affect my life for years. I called her. She answered immediately, breathless, like she'd been waiting for this. "I was going to tell you." She started, voice already defensive. It was just, you were already doing so much, and your name, your credit, is so good. We didn't think it'd matter. We, I said. Who's we? She hesitated. Your father and I, and Aiden, of course. He was in a rough spot, and we thought he'd bounce back quickly. You know how startups are, I almost laughed. You thought he'd bounce back quickly, I repeated. So instead of asking me, you stole my identity? Her voice cracked. It wasn't like that, Nora. We didn't steal. We just borrowed. Borrowed. Like my name was a spare jacket they threw on when theirs was too dirty to wear in public. Do you know what this does to me? I asked. Do you understand what this kind of debt looks like to a landlord, a loan officer, a future employer? She started crying. Real tears. I could hear the wetness in her throat. I didn't mean to hurt you. We were desperate. We just needed to help Aiden get through the dry season. He was so close, Nora. I felt something snap inside me. That phrase again. So close. He was always so close. Close to success. Close to genius. Close to making it big. He'd been on the edge of greatness for a decade, and I had been footing the bill for his fallbacks the whole time. I ended the call. I didn't say goodbye. I needed air, movement. I walked until my legs ached. Ended up sitting on a park bench, hands shaking. I thought about all the jobs I didn't apply for because I was afraid to relocate and leave my parents without help. The vacations I never took. The credit card I cut up after buying a used laptop for work. The panic I felt every time a rent went up. And all along, they'd been gambling with my name behind my back. The next day, I filed a fraud report, not to press charges, not yet, just to put a flag on the account, just to stop the bleeding, just to take back something that was mine. But the betrayal stayed with me. That night I lay awake for hours replaying it all, the sacrifices I made, the quiet pride I'd carried, the belief that I was doing the right thing. It all curdled, because this wasn't just about money anymore, this was about trust. And for the first time in my life, I didn't trust my own family. And worse, I didn't know if I ever had. I didn't speak to my parents for 3 days after filing the fraud report. 3 days of silence, of letting their calls go to voicemail, of deleting their texts without opening them. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I wanted from them, if anything. An apology felt too small. Reimbursement felt insulting. I wanted something they couldn't give me. The past rewritten. On the 4th day, I got an email from my father. Subject line, please read. He never emailed me. Not unless it was a forwarded article or a Costco coupon. The message was short. Nora, I know you're upset. I understand. But please, let's not let this mistake ruin the bigger picture. Aiden is under so much pressure right now, and your mom and I were just trying to support his dream the only way we could. You've always been the strong one. We didn't think this would break you. We were wrong. We're sorry for that. Please don't let this become public. It would destroy him. We can fix this together. Love, Dad. I stared at the words for a long time, not because they were moving, but because they weren't. This wasn't a letter about me. It was about the optics, the fallout, and the family brand. They were worried about the press, the neighbors, the narrative, not the fact that their daughter had to flag her own mother for credit fraud. That night, I finally answered my mom's calls. She picked up on the first ring, voice already trembling. Nora, thank you. Thank you for picking up. I was so scared I lost you for good. I stayed silent. She took a shaky breath. Honey, we didn't mean to hurt you. We just didn't want to see Aiden lose everything he's worked for. The startup, it's his whole world. Then maybe he should have protected it himself, I said flatly. He's trying, she said quickly. You know how hard he's working. He's always pushing himself. To do what? Keep pretending the company exists? That shut her up for a moment. Then she tried again. It's just, you've always been so responsible, so grounded. We didn't think it would hit you this hard. You've always been the one we could count on. And there it was. The praise is pressure. The compliment that wasn't a compliment. I wasn't a daughter. I was a safety net. I wasn't Nora. I was Plan B. I was the foundation they never acknowledged until it cracked. I took a deep breath. You know what hurts the most? That you didn't even ask. You decided my future was less important than his present. You gambled with my name, my credit, my peace of mind, and you didn't even think it was worth a conversation. I know, she whispered. We were just trying to protect Aiden's dream. But who protected mine? That question hung between us like smoke. She didn't answer. She couldn't. I ended the call. The next day, I told my boss I needed 2 personal days. I didn't explain. Just packed a small bag and booked a cabin 2 hours outside the city. No Wi-Fi. No cell service. Just me, a notebook, and the sudden realization that I didn't know who I was outside of being the reliable one. I wrote down everything I'd done for them in the last 5 years. Not just the money, but the emotional labor. The skipped vacations, the sleepless nights, the guilt, the silence, the way I'd swallowed resentment like vitamins and called it love. And for what? So they could protect a son who'd built a castle out of buzzwords. So they could sell a story where I was the backbone, and he was the star. No more. When I came back to the city, there were more emails. One from Aiden himself. It was the first direct message I'd gotten from him in months. Hey sis, I heard things got a little messy. Just wanted to say I'm grateful for everything you've done. I know mom and dad can be intense sometimes, but let's not blow this up. I'm so close to getting new funding. If this goes public, it'll ruin everything. We're a team, right? A team. He wanted to play family now? I didn't reply, because I'd finally realized something brutal and freeing all at once. They didn't love me because I was me. They loved what I could do for them. And now that I'd stopped doing it, they were scared. Not of losing me, of losing control, of losing their favorite illusion. So I let them sit in that fear. Because for once, I wasn't going to clean up the mess. I wasn't going to be the daughter who covered for the dreamer. I wasn't going to be their PR strategy anymore. I was done being the invisible insurance policy for someone else's glory. I was halfway through a client call when Jenna sent me the link. No message, just the URL. At first I thought it was another meme or some work gossip until I clicked it. A Reddit thread on R startups titled, Founder of Mintage under SEC Review for Misuse of Seed Funds. I felt the blood rush from my face. The thread was long, filled with screenshots, speculation, and links to cached pages from Mintage's now-defunct website. There was even an alleged leaked email chain between Aiden and one of his earliest investors, suggesting he'd exaggerated user growth metrics and used company funds for business travel that looked a lot like personal vacations. I scrolled in silence, my headset still on, the client still talking about email sync issues I couldn't hear. I ended the call without finishing it. An hour later, my phone rang. Mom, then Dad, then Aiden, then Mom again. I didn't answer any of them. At 6:12 p.m., I got a text from my mother. We need to talk, please. It's urgent. Another one minutes later. Don't believe everything you read online. They're twisting it. And finally from Aiden himself. It's all being blown out of proportion. I need your help. Please. I didn't respond. That night I poured a glass of wine, sat on my couch, and read every single comment under that Reddit post. Some were wild conspiracy theories. Others were detailed analyses from people who clearly knew the startup world. But the core was undeniable. Something shady had gone down. And for the first time, I wasn't surprised. Not angry, not hurt, just unsurprised. Because of course this was how it ended. When you build a narrative out of borrowed dreams and other people's money, eventually the ground gives way. The next day I got an email from my father with the subject line, Legal Situation. He'd attached a PDF. It was a breakdown of legal fees from a corporate attorney in New York. Total estimated cost, $14,800. The message below it read, Nora, I know you're upset, but we're asking you as family to help us get ahead of this. Aiden needs representation. If this escalates, it could ruin his future. We're begging you, don't let this get worse. I stared at it. No mention of my credit, no apology for the fraud, no offer to repay me, just a new invoice, a new emergency, a new demand wrapped in desperation. I called my dad. He answered immediately. Nora, thank you. I was hoping... I cut him off. You want me to pay for a lawyer to defend Aiden from an investigation that into fraud, right after you committed fraud against me? Silence. I don't know the full story yet, he finally said. But it's complicated. These things always are. Startups have gray areas. What matters now is damage control. Damage control for whom? I asked. Because it sure as hell isn't for me. Nor, if this goes public, it already is public, Dad. You just don't control the story this time. He tried a different tone, softer. You've always been the one who holds us together. Please, don't stop now. There it was again. That role they'd carved for me. Not daughter, not person, glue. I hung up. 3 hours later, Aiden showed up at my apartment. I didn't know how he got in. Maybe Mom gave him the code. He looked tired, but not panicked. Still dressed like a founder. Tailored jacket, sleek sneakers, casual confidence cracking just at the edges. I just need 10 minutes, he said. Please. I let him in. He sat on the edge of my couch, elbows on knees, voice low. Look, I messed up. I exaggerated some numbers. Everyone does it. You have to hype the vision before it's real. It's how the game works. I said nothing. He kept going. They're making this into something it's not. If I get a good lawyer, I can explain everything. But I'm tapped out. I need help. I folded my arms. And why should I help you? His face faltered. Because we're family. I shook my head. No, Aiden. You don't get to use that word like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Not after what you've let them do to me. Not after what you took part in. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then quietly, I didn't know about the credit card. I raised an eyebrow. Maybe. But you knew about the money. You knew every time they asked me for help. Every time I covered a bill you should have paid. And you never stopped them. You never said thank you. You just let it happen. His voice cracked. I didn't ask for any of this. No, I said. You just accepted all of it. He sat there, stunned. And for the first time, I didn't feel small in his presence. I felt solid. When he left, he didn't say goodbye. I didn't either. I didn't plan the confrontation. I didn't rehearse a speech. It just happened. 3 days after Aiden left my apartment, Mom sent a text saying they were hosting a family dinner to regroup. Her words, not mine. Regroup made it sound like a PR huddle, not the fallout from decades of imbalance. I wasn't going to go. But something about the silence that followed, how no one had reached out again, how they just seemed to wait for me to come back like always, lit a quiet rage inside me. So I went. Their house looked exactly the same. Same beige sidings, same welcome mat with the curling corner, same porch light flickering like a bad omen. Inside it smelled like pot roast and panic. Mom was moving around the kitchen too quickly, pretending to be busy. Dad had sat at the table flipping through the mail. Aiden scrolled on his phone, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Hey, Nora, Mom said brightly. I sat down. No hugs, no small talk, no warmth. Just a thick, clinging tension. She avoided my eyes. You know, the article, the thread, the press is twisting things. They're not twisting anything, I said. They're just saying it out loud. Dad stepped in. Let's not lose sight of what's important. Aiden's future is still on the line. I turned to look at him. Is that what's important to you? His future? Another pause. Mom chimed in, cautious. We didn't mean to make you feel left behind, Nora. You didn't make me feel anything, I said. You made me invisible. The table went still. Even Aiden looked up. I leaned forward. I have one question. They braced. I could feel it. If I lost my job tomorrow, if I was the one being investigated, if I couldn't pay rent and asked you for help, would you be protecting me the way you're protecting him? Silence. Not hesitation, not surprise, just silence. No words, no deflection, no one even tried to lie. I let it stretch. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted the quiet to scream. That's what I thought, I said. Mom's lip quivered. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, I cut in. You protect him because you see him as valuable, because you still believe he's destined for something great. But me? I was just the foundation. You only noticed me when you stood on top of me to keep him from falling. Dad rubbed his temples. That's not fair. Isn't it? I said. You opened a credit card in my name. You begged me to pay his legal fees. You asked me to keep quiet. And now you want a dinner to reset everything? Aiden finally spoke. I didn't know about the card, Nora. I didn't ask them to do any of that. But you didn't stop them, I said. You never once asked me how I was doing. You knew I was working long hours. You knew I was sending money home. You just let it happen. I thought that's what families did, he muttered. No, I said. That's what parasites do. He stood. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. The room felt like it shrank, like the air thinned around us. Mom reached across the table. Nora, please, don't let this tear us apart. It's already torn, I said. I'm just the first one to stop pretending it's not. I stood up, pushed the chair back slowly, looked around the room one last time. I'm not coming back here, I said. Not like this. Not until I know I'm seen as a person, not just a backup plan. No one stopped me. No one chased after me. I walked out the door, and for once the cold night air didn't sting. It felt clean, honest. In my car, I sat for a few minutes before turning the key, hands steady, breathing slow. I didn't feel like the villain. I didn't feel like the abandoned child. I felt like someone who finally said what needed to be said. When I got home, I made a cup of tea and deleted the family group chat. I updated my emergency contacts. I even opened a notebook and wrote one line. If silence is your answer, then I've been asking the wrong people. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not friends, not coworkers, not even myself, not fully. But the night after that dinner, I couldn't sleep. My brain kept circling the same thought over and over again. How many daughters were treated like safety nets while sons were handed wings? At 1:12 a.m., I sat down at my laptop with a mug of cold tea and a folder full of receipts, medical bills, wire transfers, credit card statements, screenshots of texts from my mom asking for a little help this month, emails forwarding overdue notices with subject lines like, "Need you to cover this, again." I didn't add commentary. I didn't exaggerate. I just labeled, organized, and documented everything. The story was already there, in numbers they thought I'd never connect. Then I opened a blank document and began to write. I didn't use names, not theirs, not mine. The byline was simply anonymous. The headline was clear and sharp. The financially responsible daughter, a silent crisis in American families. I wrote about what it means to be the reliable one, the emotional weight of being called strong as an excuse to give you less care. How compliments like "you're so mature" are code for "we won't ask how you're doing." I wrote about being the one who pays, who sacrifices, who never complains, because if she does, she's ungrateful. I wrote about financial abuse hiding under the language of love, how my brother was the chosen one with the startup dream, while I became the invisible sponsor behind the scenes. I painted the picture not in rage, but in truth. The patterns, the guilt, the endless taking. It took 5 hours, no breaks. When I finished, the sun had started bleeding through the blinds. I sat there, staring at the final sentence. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. That afternoon, I sent the draft and all the documentation to a journalist I'd quietly followed for a while. Her name was May Linton. She specialized in stories about financial control within families. I used a burner email. I didn't expect a reply. 3 days later, she responded. She told me the piece was powerful and devastating. She'd never seen documentation so thorough. She asked if she could publish it on her platform under the anonymous tag. I said yes. The article went live on a Monday morning. By Monday night, it had exploded. It first made the rounds in online communities. Then it spread to social media. People weren't just reading it. They were reposting it, quoting it, crying over it. One woman said she printed it out and read it to her therapist. Another said she'd forwarded it to her sisters with the caption, "This is us." My inbox, anonymous though it was, filled with messages. Strangers telling me I'd written the story they were never allowed to say out loud. Some said, "I thought I was alone." Others said, "Now I know I'm not crazy." And then the spotlight shifted. Readers began connecting dots. Someone found an old fundraising deck from a failed fintech startup with eerily similar claims to the ones described in the article. A few sleuths dug deeper. They noticed the same names, same cities, same timeline. It wasn't long before people realized the article wasn't just personal, it was a case study, and it pointed to a real startup. To Aiden, one former employee came forward, anonymously at first, then an investor, then another. Whispers turned into questions. Questions turned into headlines. My brother shut down his social media. My dad sent me an email titled, "What have you done?" My mom left 3 voicemails in one day. She started with tears and ended with fury. "Do you realize you've destroyed your family?" But here's what they didn't ask. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't say sorry. They didn't acknowledge what they had done. And I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about destroying anything. It was about truth. About reclaiming the years they took from me. The financial support, yes. But also the identity. The silence. The shame. They wrote a version of our family story where I was the background and the foundation. And I finally flipped the page. May emailed me again. She said she was receiving hundreds of messages, that readers were asking for a series, that people wanted to share their own stories now. I told her do it, because this story didn't just belong to me, it belonged to every daughter who paid for peace, every woman who thought being good meant disappearing, every person who had ever been told their worth was in what they gave, and punished the second they stopped giving. I didn't torch the house. I just opened the windows and let the world see what was already rotting inside. It didn't take long. 2 days after the article went viral, Reddit lit up again, this time with a post titled, "Confirmed. Mint Edge founder lied about growth numbers. Insider documentation released." People connected the dots. Screenshots from the anonymous expose were matched with archived pitch decks, buzzword-filled startup videos, and rooftop party photos. Aiden's profile was obvious to anyone paying attention. Financial blogs picked up the thread. Then came the tech sites. Then came YouTube commentary videos with thumbnails that read, "Startup Scam," in bright red text. Financial influencers did livestream breakdowns of Aiden's pitch materials. Former interns posted vague tweets like, "Knew it! Knew it from day one!" Someone even created a meme template of Aiden holding a cocktail with the caption, "Funded by Sister's Credit Score." Mint Edge's website disappeared within 24 hours. Aiden locked all his accounts. Investors who once called him visionary were suddenly deeply concerned. A board member demanded an audit. Others quietly pulled their funding. One investor made a statement on LinkedIn. I was misled. And worse, so was his family. My phone didn't stop buzzing, but not from the public, from them. My mom left voicemail after voicemail. "Nora, please. This is tearing us apart. Your uncle called, your aunt, even the pastor. You've made your point. Take the article down." My dad emailed me with lines like, "We need to move forward, and let's not make this permanent." Nowhere in his message was the word sorry. Only concern about what other people thought. Aiden didn't reach out, but someone I knew from his co-working space told me he was calling investors, blaming cancel culture, saying his sister betrayed him. They still didn't get it. This was never about revenge. This was about truth. About finally breaking a pattern where silence was mistaken for peace and sacrifice was repackaged as a virtue, and I watched the kingdom they built collapse under its own weight. 3 weeks later, my mom sent a text. "We're sorry. Please talk to us." I didn't reply. The next day, "Can you take the article down? We can fix this together." That's when I realized they weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they couldn't control the narrative anymore. So I responded. "I didn't burn it down. You built it with dry lies. I just turned on the light." Silence followed. Not even a passive-aggressive follow-up. Just quiet. A kind of defeat that felt familiar, but this time, it wasn't mine. Later that month, I got a call from a lawyer representing one of Mint Edge's investors. Apparently, some of the misused funds had gone toward paying off a credit line linked to my name. I handed over everything I had. Emails, statements, dates. A few weeks later, I received a reimbursement. Not the full amount, but enough. Enough to make a choice I hadn't made in years. I enrolled in graduate school, I moved to a quiet town, rented a tiny studio apartment, started over, no announcements, no family group chat, just me. A schedule that belonged to no one else. Days that started and ended without guilt. I blocked them all, their numbers, their emails, every possible way they could claw back into my peace. Sometimes healing doesn't mean a dramatic closure. Sometimes it means no longer flinching when your phone rings. Sometimes it's an empty inbox that feels like freedom. I no longer saw myself as the strong one or the dependable one. Those were roles handed to me to keep me small. Now I was just me, still figuring it out, still healing, but no longer carrying their version of love on my back. I wasn't the villain in their downfall. I just refused to stay buried beneath their foundation. Some families will call you strong because it benefits them when you don't break. They will wrap guilt in praise, make you feel selfish for choosing yourself, and call it love. But love without respect isn't love, and family without boundaries isn't family. It's captivity with a smile. You're allowed to tell the truth, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it makes you the villain in their story, even if it costs you their version of togetherness. Sometimes choosing yourself means being the one who ends the cycle, not because you hate them, but because you finally decided to stop abandoning yourself. You don't owe anyone your silence just because they share your last name.